Good evening. Do you ever get the intriguing feeling that the world's gone stark, staring bonkers?
You may not believe her, but the pretty tan girl in the picture...
Let's have a look at her.
...says that the stainless steel breastplate and chastity belt are...
really very comfortable.
There's no accounting for taste. We seem to have evolved from the Stone Age into the Aluminium Age.
Clothes of the future will be assembled like cars. They will be sprayed on or riveted together.
Have you ever heard of anything so daft? Or maybe it's just me, but if the Paris fashion showed the world was mad, the Daily Record showed it was also bad.
The picture from Biafra, that must shock us all.
The point about showing it was that the wretched, starving little creature had...
only an hour to live.
And indeed, within an hour of the picture being taken, he died.
It is too late to weep for this child, but there are thousands more like him waiting for death.
The Record and its sister paper, The Mirror, did a magnificent spread, contrasting Biafra with Belsen, appealing for the help of their readers to alleviate the suffering.
Humanity is outraged by this crucifixion of the innocents.
Skilled reporters can send back eyewitness accounts from Biafra, but nothing can beat authentic pictures, and the papers are truly concerned about this tragedy.
3 weeks ago, we distributed food and drugs to a beleaguered hospital inside Biafra when others complained the risks were too great.
That was the Daily Sketch on Tuesday, but the Guardian on the same day pinpointed the snags that confront men and women of goodwill.
Red Cross has to suspend flights to Biafra.
And why had these mercy missions stopped?
It seems that the Biafran authorities had failed to issue the authorization to allow the aircraft to land.
If the world this week has been mad and bad, it's also been sad.
Heartman dies.
A lot of people must have had their fingers crossed for the success of the surgeons, but...
Britain's second heart transplant patient, 48-year-old Mr. Gordon Ford, died at 9:20 last night in the National Heart Hospital in London.
Let's move from one aspect of life-giving to another.
The Pope and the pill.
Pope's ban greeted by despair.
The Pope's bitter pill.
This was the big story of the week. It was broken on Monday by the evenings. The Glasgow Evening Citizen splashed,
"The Pope bans the pill."
The Evening Times put the edict in a nutshell.
Pope Paul today banned the pill and all other birth control devices for the world's 500 million Roman Catholics.
Next morning, the papers were in full cry. The Glasgow Herald mumphed,
Pope's birth control ban causes anxiety.
while the Scotsman harumphed.
Pope's ban on birth control seen as blow to Catholics.
A blow? The Mail put it a bit more toughly.
Worldwide anger over ban on family planning.
The Record came out with fists flying.
He is mistaken in his decision.
It also declared,
An issue no newspaper should dodge.
as its companion The Mirror stated,
A newspaper which does not state its views, without equivocation, on the Pope's encyclical about birth control is not worth reading.
well, we can all go on reading our favourite newspapers, for they were all flabbergasted in varying degrees. Comments came from France,
A shock.
from Italy,
Consternation.
and in Britain itself.
Many will have a crisis of conscience.
I've carefully tried to avoid the technicalities of all this, but who could ignore this intro in The Mirror?
The rhythm method of birth control is commonly known in Catholic families as Vatican roulette.
Is it? Not being a Roman Catholic, I just don't know.
It has been calculated that a woman marrying at 19 and attempting to prevent a conception by the rhythm method would have between 4 and 7 children by the age of 44.
I've put hundreds of them in Grandma's Guinness, and they don't do her any harm.
That was the inimitable Giles in today's Express. Other papers reflected the resistance to the Pope's edict.
Doctors defy the Pope.
The intro made their objection explicit.
The Secretary of Italy's Roman Catholic Doctors Association yesterday called on doctors to oppose Pope Paul's ban on artificial birth control.
Today's Times devoted its whole letters page to the pros and cons,
The Pope's pronouncement on birth control.
with one rather acid little note at the end from
Miss Mary Chance.
who said,
To those critics of Pope Paul's encyclical regarding birth control, may I say, you are alive.
and what is the Pope saying today with this onslaught of disappointment and criticism avalanching on his head?
Speaking in an emotion-laden voice and with tears in his eyes, the Pope told a general audience at his summer residence at Castel Gandolfo that the encyclical on birth control had presented him with the most difficult problem he has had to face during his reign.
The Telegraph went on,
We admit that this feeling
of tremendous responsibility.
caused us great suffering, and it was ever present with us during the last 4 years.
And there's been a lot of anguish over the other big story of the week, Czechoslovakia.
Dubček wins time at the Red Summit.
Splashed today's Daily Record, while The Guardian declared,
Checks' hopes rise as final talks get underway.
The Daily Express claimed its own victory.
Press Council rejects complaint against Express.
Dundee students felt the Express had
grossly misrepresented the attitude of students to supply of birth control pills to them.
The complaint was rejected, but I, and here I am unforgivably to blame, found it curious that on the same page was a story headlined,
Dangerous Years for Girls Who Take Love Casually.
And it told us
40 out of every 1,000 single girls of childbearing age become pregnant every year.
Was it an intentional juxtaposition? Maybe some sub-editor was in a holiday mood. Now that Parliament's broken up, I certainly am.
There is a growing impression that Mr. Wilson's personal fortunes have taken a turn for the better.
So said the Glasgow Herald. Certainly it's been a long and trying session in the Commons, and you can take your choice as to how successful it's been. Certainly
the parliamentary session now ending has passed 63 public bills
and thrown Enoch Powell, George Brown and Ray Gunter onto the backbenches. But the Scotsman agrees that
government confidence seems to be reviving.
Mr. Willie Hamilton, the Labour MP for West Fife, took a sour look at the end of the parliamentary term in the Sunday Mail. He said of MPs,
by this time of the year, they hate the sight of one another.
And Willie feels
it's good to be getting away from the sight and smell of the place, from its intrigues, its manoeuvrings, from its hothouse atmosphere, from its stuffy antiquity and conservatism.
And how is the Prime Minister spending his time? According to Mr. Desmond Donnelly MP in the News of the World,
I know also that Mr. Wilson has returned to his favourite pastime in the long watches of the night.
And what might that pastime be?
Is the feverish search under his bed in Downing Street for plotters against his position.
But for the rest of our legislators,
the grouse moors and the sand dunes beckon.
But before they beckoned, we had this delightful picture spread across the back page of The Sun.
The Commons breaking up for the holidays.
The Sun, assuming you're all as jaded as we denizens of Westminster, asked your immediate reaction to the picture. Was it
horror?
Apprehension?
Relief?
It also asked if you felt the man with the hammer was
Enoch Powell,
Edward Heath,
General de Gaulle,
Mrs. Barbara Castle.
You.
If you had the delusion it was you, then the Sun reckoned you were
housebreaker.
Ouch. Puns should be used sparingly. Joe Grimman didn't spare any punches in today's Scotsman.
I read with astonishment that Lord Clyde nominated Lord Avonside to a Conservative Party committee.
Horrors.
And that Lord Avonside had accepted.
This was the latest brush over the appointment of a judge to Ted Heath's controversial committee for a Scottish Assembly.
A more startlingly improper proceeding it would be difficult to imagine,
said Bernard Levin in yesterday's Daily Mail, but Charles Graham in the Express took a different view.
It is a long time since so much drivel has been talked in Scotland about keeping our judicial system far above the political arena.
Mr. Graham elaborates.
The Scottish Daily Express is simply amused by the ferocious indignation of the present Lord Advocate and Solicitor General, one of or both of whom may one day hope to leave politics behind and take to the higher plane of the bench.
And what has Lord Clyde himself got to say about it all? He has promised
fair consideration to a request from the Scottish National Party that he nominate a Court of Session judge as an advisor and assessor to the SNP committee, now drawing up a prospective written constitution for Scotland.
And what does he think of the row over Lord Avenside's appointment?
Getting a bit ridiculous.
One man who could never stomach the ridiculous was a braw lad from Galashiels, Mr. William Barclay of the Daily Express. He died last Friday, honoured by all who knew him as the greatest parliamentary reporter there will ever be. His editor said of him,
William Barclay brought to reporting in the House of Commons an unequalled sense of its importance and its humour.
Millions read him, even if they didn't recognise his byline. They benefited by his parliamentary expertise and his individual reporting, which set a standard for all who copied him. Bill Barclay had a splendid sense of humour. He'd have loved this headline in his own paper.
Dog bites postman.
We're not laughing, say 3,000.
No wonder they aren't laughing.
For last year, 3,000 very real dogs sank their teeth into regulation blue GPO uniforms.
Ah, well, it's the holiday season. Look at some of these headlines. The Mirror.
Mayor in a balloon is booked by the police.
You can't keep the Irish down either. Here's a sketch story from Australia.
65-year-old Irishman Paddy O'Donnell was told at Perth, Western Australia yesterday that he was world famous.
And how did he come by this accolade?
The magistrate fined Paddy £4.13 and fourpence for being drunk for the 498th time.
Meantime, the Sunday Mail was taking a look at how Scotland treated its visitors.
What a way to greet our tourists!
Yelped the Mail and showed some photographs of what's going on in the Highlands.
Instead of proper cafes, there's a collection of old buses, converted caravans and vans.
We've even had a crucifixion.
Man found nailed to cross.
That was on Hampstead Heath. Then there was this Sunday Telegraph report.
A case of suspected cannibalism has been discovered in North London.
While this was happening in one of Her Majesty's institutions,
8 prisoners were nursing hangovers yesterday as an inquiry began to find out how they became drunk in the prison.
and how did they manage it?
Prison staff found a tin contained a mixture of treacle and yeast.
And what did the authorities have to say about it?
Must have produced a very potent drink.
But let's end as we began, with those frenzied, futuristic, fantastic fashions we are being subjected to from Paris.
Stainless steel bras? No.
Judy Ennis in the Mail doesn't feel prejudiced.
It's not that I have anything against stainless steel. In fact, I think of stainless steel in knives, forks and spoons as positively desirable.
Then what's the matter, Judy?
But stainless steel in a bra and miniskirt?
Nora Downey in the News of the World poses a ripe question.
Does your husband object to taking you out in a transparent blouse or a dress with a plunge neckline?
Well, does he? Miss Deirdre McSharry confessed in The Sun.
Frankly, I haven't bothered with a bra myself this week.
Jean Rook in this sketch felt the exposing Paris trends all boiled down to what a girl sees in the bathroom mirror every morning. Having seen through Yves Saint Laurent's see-throughs, she reports,
I tackled Eve this morning and said he must really be joking.
to which the bold Monsieur Saint Laurent replied blandly.
I believe in it for casual evenings at home.
The Sun responded in a leading article.
Away with trousers.
It was a kind of plea for men. Why should women have it all their own way? Good night.